So, hello everyone and welcome back to some more of the Dragon Age Origins here with Truska. We just came out of the Brecelian camp, but I think we will properly start moving and doing all things in the next episode. So, I will be reading codexes in this one specific episode, so if you're not interested in the codex entries that I haven't read yet thus far, then you are indeed even recommended to go and skip this episode, because no point for you to be then hearing about all of this. What quest related would I have not read? Apparently a few. The Shaper's Life a long time ago, I guess, just got one more update then. Well, sure, why not read it? Shaper is still, after all, a dwarven thing anyway, so should be something important for me to read. It's kind of surprising though, because usually I do try to read the quest related, but I guess I didn't realize it was a quest related. So, the Shaper's Life. The blessing of the Shaper is given only to those who walk with the stone. It is a path that cuts deep and the road is far from secure, but those who desire to work in memory must first honor it. Documents of the stone protect her and present a new history to the memories. Only then will the blessing of the shepherd be upon you, from the Shaper's Life. And then Orsama has carved a legacy from the stone, but history is more than the comings and goings that fill the streets. These caverns are old cuts and well-traveled. The true will of the stone is revealed far from the halls of politics and commerce. The Shaper must step away from the familiar and seek out revelations from the frontier or buried secrets on paths abandoned. The Shaper must first walk away, if he is to return. First steps from the Shaper's Life. Then far from the abundant, the deep roads are patrolled by those who fight for Orsamar and the stone. These defenders have seen great and tragic events unfold, but they are committed to the moment, not the memory. It is the Shaper's burden to walk this path with a mind to observation. He will fight if pressed. Every dwarf owes that to the stone, but his purpose is to record, not create. Although dark and deep, the old paths are alive with deeds. Only the dedication of the Shaper can ensure they are not lost to the memories. The old path from the Shaper's Life. And then, before the dark spawn, the stone held an empire. Dozens of tykes, each cavern a shade of dwarven pride, communities separate but united. They fell by degrees, ruins crumbled into tombstones of forgotten glory, but the stone is a living history, and absence can reveal more than the constant scrutiny it does. Scrutiny. As the stone shifts, she chooses what remains buried and what must see the light. The Shapers must return, must walk the lost way, so the children of the stone can see what has been surrendered and what can be gained. This is the sacrifice of the Shaper. The lost way from the Shaper's Life. And then you have walked the path of the Shaper and documented the stone. The blessings of the Shaper is yours to wield in the carvings of a new path. One for tomorrow's Shaper to follow from the Shaper's Life. Alright. Then Blackstone letter of condolences that I have been taking to people. My dear lady, it is with great regret that I must inform you of the death of your husband. He died as he lived, with the greatest honor, completing a task of vital importance to the guild. Rest assured that we will take vengeance on those responsible for his death. Please accept my condolences for your loss. Raelnor Hawkwind. This letter is marked with the seal of the Blackstone Irregulars, but yeah, I have done this quest for sure, I just didn't realize there was this here. Then the Mages Collective. Despite the loyalist cast on the Mages political community, many libertarians and equitarians have begun to see eye to eye with respect to the Chantry's role in the Mages' daily life. A growing number of mages, particularly those whose magic never strays from the Maker's mandate, feel that the Chantry's constant oversight is a burden upon their creativity and their very will, and one that hinders their ability to do their work. These mages, along with a number of head wizards who work their arts outside the Chantry's influence, have formed a shadow guild of sorts. A mages collective, wherein members can submit requests and have them seen to without a judgment. This collective manages to work in relative secrecy, their members discreet and their clients anonymous. As of yet, this collective has seen no sanction from the Templars, and there has been no sign that its members are practicing magic of which the Maker would not approve. Still, practicing magic outside of the influence of the Chantry is a dream for some and a dangerous notion for others, and many believe that it is only a matter of time before the veil of secrecy is lifted, and the Mages Collective is brought to swift and brutal justice. From a treatise of magic and politics by first enchanter Josephus, apparently. And Reynolds' plea. I'm trying to think who was Reynolds. It's definitely a familiar name, but I can't place it right now. Well, should you find this note, I beg you, please complete my task. I am Reynolds, Master Mage and mentor to the misguided fool, Heshir. It seems that my young apprentice got mixed up in a magic unmentionable, for which I pledged to pursue him to the ends of the world. If you are reading this, then my apprentice caught up to me and choked from me my last breath. I beg you to delve into this ancient elven forest and end the threat of the abomination my beloved apprentice has become. Should you do this, then I beg you, keep the feldspar ring you find on my apprentice's fingers as a token of my thanks. And may you never know profound failures that I feel as I write this, Reynolds. Feldspar ring. I think I actually have that right. So then we did find him. Yep. There it is. Feldspar ring. Should have noticed that at the time. Oh well, can't always notice everything. But that's at least all the quest related that we have at the moment. And there is something that we have not had there. We'll have a quick peek what this even means, but I don't think I will be reading these. Just a quick peek what they are, but otherwise, yeah, they're just specifically tutorial things, and we don't need that stuff. Yep, no need. Spell combinations I found so very few. I really wish that I would find more of them, but I don't know if it's even possible to find them all at once, at one playthrough. Maybe it is, like if you completely take different spells to your mages, but I don't really know. Like at least the oil with fire, I know that works well, but we don't really use those spells in this group anyways. But any other combinations that there could be, I have no idea of. I'm at least happy I found those. There is these 3 notes here of the Kalen, and this of course. Should we read this? I think so. So sure. Kalen's documents, page 1 out of 3. To His Majesty King Kalen of Ferelden, my Warden Commander assures me that we face a plight. This thing threatens us both, and we must work together to fight it, lest it devour all. Our 2 nations have not had a happy history, but that is all it is, history. It is the future that is at stake now. Let us put aside our father's disagreements so that we may secure the future for both our countries. My chevaliers stand ready and will accompany the Grey Wardens of Orlais to Ferelden. At your word, the might of Orlais will march to reinforce the Ferelden forces. Sincerely, Empress Celine I. An official letter from Empress Celine I of Orlais to King Halen of Ferelden. Yeah, I understand completely, nonetheless. Why Locane wouldn't have wanted to have Orlais troops here, considering there was a war between Ferelden and Orlais, or Ferelden claimed its independence from Orlais, but they definitely would have helped at the start quite a lot. Have those Grey Wardens from there, plus even the Chevaliers, definitely would have helped. I would think that having a darkspawn threat should go above anything else at the time anyways, but, well, on the other hand, if you don't even believe that it is actually a plight itself, then, well, you might be even less likely to want to do something like it, so. Then Kaelin documents page 2 out of 3. Your Majesty, my men will arrive as soon as possible to bolster your forces. Make a willing this plight will be ended before it has begun. Kaelin, I beseech you, as your uncle, not to join the Grey Wardens on the field. You cannot afford to take this risk. Veralden cannot afford it. Let me remind you again that you do not have an heir. Your death, and it pains me to even think of it, would plunge Veralden into chaos. And yes, perhaps when this is over you will allow me to bring up the subject of your heir. While son from both the Terran and Mac-Tier lines would unite Ferelden like no other, we must accept that perhaps this can never be. The Queen approaches her 30th year, and her ability to give you a child lessens with each passing month. I submit to you again that it might be the time to put Anora aside. We parted harshly the last time I spoke of this, but it has been a full year since and nothing has changed. Please, nephew, consider my words and untrust this grace be with you. I was thinking that this has to be from Arl Eamon, and it is. A letter from Arl Eamon to King Kaelin. Very interesting letters these ones though, gotta say. Very interesting. And then page of 3 out of 3. This letter appears to have been crumpled, then carefully smoothed out and folded again. Kaelin, the visit to Ferelden will be postponed indefinitely due to the Darkspawn problem. You understand, of course? The Darkspawn have odd timing, don't they? Let us deal with them first. Once that is done, we can further discuss permanent alliance between Orlais and Ferelden. A note written in an uncharacteristically familiar tone from Empress Celine I to King Kaelin. But yeah, at least the Empress Celine seemed to have a very friendly relationship with King Kaelin, considering apparently had even considered coming and visiting here. That would have been one thing too. Maybe the Empress and the King Kaelin could have gotten together. But on the other hand, it would be kind of sad to just throw away Anora because there is no child yet, even though it's understandable heirs were important in this sort of times. I assume that then I have pretty much, at least I've tried to do so, that I read everything that I happen to get if I go and click on it. I don't think it's necessarily happened every single time, but I hope at least most days, most times. Return to Ostacar credits on the other hand, but I don't think we really need to look into that one, but it's there. Then books and songs are also fun, and culture and history and magic and religion. There's a lot of things that are still fun to read, but of course I don't think we can really read everything this time around because that would be a lot of reading, but at least a few things. Characters are nice. But the problem with a lot of characters is still that there's going to be more text here in the future, I'm sure. So it's a little bit problematic for those who will have more text. Like these guys clearly won't. But yeah, our companions might have more. Sevran probably even. I guess I can read about Bantake and Quarin. The Baron will not bow to you simply because you demand it. Younger brother to Arl Eamon of Redcliffe, and uncle to King Kaelin, Tegan holds the Panorn of Rainosphere, a tiny province of Redcliffe squeezed between the Frostback Mountains and Lake Calenhat. Ban Deacon avoids the Denering court except to go hunting with his nephew, and rarely makes himself heard at the Landsmeet, preferring to leave politics to his brother. Understandable. Then there's also Sten. Locane also is a person that I think has more text. First Enchanter Irving, on the other hand, not necessarily. The circle will go on and we will learn from the strategy and be strengthened by it. There is no higher office in the Circle Tower than that of the First Enchanter. The one who holds this title must not only be an able administrator, but also a mentor, leader, and surrogate parent to all the mages of the tower. Irving has proven himself to be all these things with an added dose of cunning. Most apprentices know that little goes on in the tower that Irving does not know. He can soothe Templars angered by some childish magical prank at the same time that he lauds the pranksters, and everyone walks away satisfied. Although much of the circle was destroyed by Ultra's abominations, Irving survived and plans to rebuild what he can. Arl Rendenhove is also a little bit more special. Haramont. No one is born with rights to the throne. The sitting king may recommend a successor, but the assembly ultimately decides who will rule. True, House Haramond is one of the oldest noble houses, as old as Orzammar itself. Entrin's most trusted advisor, Haramond, is well known for being an able administrator, and the author of many compromises in the ever-warring assembly. His opposition of Prince Palin's bid for the throne ended badly. The assembly named the prince king of Orzammar, and Palin's first act was to call for Haramond's execution. Poor dude. Knight Commander Krekor also, we can definitely read. Not that there's that much to read. It is the innocent Volk of Ferelden who matter. I would lay down my life and the life of any mage to protect them. Grim and taciturn, Krekor has been Knight Commander of the Templar forces stationed at the Circle Tower for so many years that hardly anyone except the first enchanter recalls that he is not simply part of the tower himself. Brother Ferdinand Genitivi, oh dear, you who wanted so necessarily to tell everyone about the sacred urns of Antraste. As it is the duty of all true sons of the Chantry to make the chant heard from every corner of the world, I made it my mission to find as many corners of the world as possible. The Maker can hardly accept us to do one without the other, except from In Pursuit of Knowledge, the Travels of Chantry Scholar of Brother Genitivi. Brother Genitivi is one of the Chantry's most well-known scholars, primarily on the basis of the stories he has published, which many of his contemporaries dismiss as fanciful, of his travels across the length and breadth of Tidas. His travels and rather too curious nature led him to study of folklore, which gave him the notion that he could track down that most debated of all artifacts, the Urn of Sacred Ashes. He announced that he had found what appeared to be the trail of the urn left in the legends of the regions through which it had passed from Minratius on its way into hiding. And he appears to have been right. The final resting place of Antraste lay at the summit of a remote mountain. He returned to Denerin, a little worse for wear, and was granted funds and manpower to mount an expedition to study the temple in which the urn is kept. Again, never done this before, but hey, we'll see how the heck that will be working out. Don't know about that. We have read all of that. Arl even Quarin. Nobility does not exist without obligation. We owe all we have, even our lives, to our land and our people. As the maternal uncle of King Cailan, Arl Eamon is one of the king's most trusted advisors. Redcliffe, while not a large or especially wealthy part of Ferelden, is a critical strategic location. The fortress guards the western pass that leads to Orlais, as well as the major trade roads with Orzammar. A well-respected man, though not the most charismatic, King Cailan once said of him, "My uncle Eamon is a man everyone thinks well of when they remember to think of him at all." He fell ill with a mysterious condition that even magic could not treat. It was no common ailment. Eamon was poisoned by a blood mage, Yowan, who claimed to be working for Theron Locane, and the Earl's life was saved only by the most extraordinary measures, finding the Urn of Sacred Ashes, the remains of Antraste herself. Duncan, good old Duncan. Men and women from every race, warriors and mages, barbarians and kings, the Grey Wardens sacrificed everything to stem the tide of darkness and prevailed. Like many others, Duncan gave up his family name when he joined the ranks of the Wardens, a symbolic gesture of cutting ties. He might say this was a convenience in his case, however. His mother was from the Underfells, his father from the Winter. His childhood was spent in the free marches and Orlais. His people were everywhere, and his homeland was nowhere. He was given the almost impossible task of leading the Wardens in Ferelden, a kingdom that had thrown the Order out 200 years earlier. Facing local suspicion and hostility, he set about finding recruits. He was killed in battle against overwhelming numbers of Darkspawn at Ostagar, alongside King Kaelin. Sad times, very much so. Queen Nora we can also be leaving later for sure. Connor, sure. I feel like I'm sleeping, but I guess I'm not. While most of the pans and Earls of Ferelden cart their children with them to the Landsmeet in the interest of eventually marrying them off, Connor has spent his entire life at Redcliffe, and it's hardly surprising the child possessed the gift of magic. By law, he should have been taken to the Circle of Magi at the first sign, abdicating his claim to Redcliffe. Instead, the boy was kept out of public view and his magic hushed up, with disastrous results. All mages are beacons that attract the attention of faith spirits. Because of this, they are trained and tested by the Circle to ensure that they can withstand attacks from malevolent fate creatures that seek entry into the waking world. Untrained, Connor drew the attention of a powerful demon that tore the veil asunder. He was freed from the demon's power at a terrible price, the cost of his mother's life. Connor himself will be sent to the Circle, where he will no longer endanger innocent people. Sad times that it had to be so. Sad times. But so it is. Sir Cautrian, some of us know what honor and loyalty are. Cautrian came to Loken's service the hard way. She belonged to a poor family and was out doing work on the farm when she saw a man on horseback being attacked by several bandits. She rushed to his assistance and found out belatedly that the man she saved was none other than the great hero Locane. Though she was hardly more than a child, he took her in, offering her a position with his soldiers, and she climbed through the ranks through sheer determination. Becoming the commander of Marik's Shield, Locane's elite soldier was the proudest moment of her life. I know she was also there in the very start of the game after all. I didn't recognize this name, but she was definitely there. Then we can still read King Kaelin Therin and not read the rest of the characters. I'd hope for a war like in the tales, a king riding with the fabled Grey Wardens against the tainted god. Son of the legendary King Marik Therin, Kaelin was the first Ferelden king born into a land free from foreign rule in 2 generations. Since his father's death, he held the throne alongside his queen, Anora. He fell in battle alongside Duncan at Ostagar. Indeed he did. There's a lot of creatures to read too if we want, but like said, can't read everything. List items I've tried to read when we have gotten them, other than apparently there's one. Archons of the Imperium. Oh yeah, this is like the book that we got, so we might as well read it right now then. Archon Darinius of the Winter journeyed deep into the lightless realm of the dwarves and then forged a covenant with Entrin Stonehammer, Lord of the Dwarven Empire. At least I think it was, maybe it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't that one, but then I'm thinking, what was this then? As a symbol of their pact, Entrin gave the Archon a pair of rings, one that shone like the evening star, and one as luminous as the dawn. So long as the rings were united, Darinius need fear nothing, and for the friendship of the dwarves is a mighty sword and shield. The Archon wore the rings of dawn and dusk for 20 years, never removing them, and when he died, they were cut from his fingers by magisters squabbling over his vacant throne, then separated and finally lost. Ah, from the book. It was from that. Yep, it was actually the Book of the Hermit. From a book formerly in the possession of a hermit indeed, so that was it. I don't think we have those rings though, so sad times. Would be nice if we did. Sound like nice rings anyways. Nothing even remotely like it. No sirrees. Oh well. Not that I expected that we did have it, because I didn't remember anything of the sort. Okay, let's go for the culture and history next, sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read all of that at least. Yeah, there's so much that we have just skip because there's so much to read. Let's see, the long walk. Sure, I think it's about, nonetheless, also still the elves, considering it's in this the same category pretty much. Maybe. I don't know. It's not completely, I guess, but there's the Aravels and the Utenera at least. So, the long walk. When our people left the winter, we had nothing except the knowledge that for the first time in the countless generations we were free. Yep. So elves who had been slaves and then formed the Dalish kingdom and were finally free from that, the winter kingdom. It was Shartan's dream that one day we would have our own homeland, where we could live as we chose, after the long struggle that claimed the lives of many, even Shartan himself. We were granted the Dales, and though the Dales were to the south of the land of Orlace, and a long way off from the winter, it mattered little. We were going home, and so we walked. We called our journey the Long Walk, for that was what it was. We walked with what little we had on our backs. Some walked without shoes, where they had none. Full families, women with infants, the old and young alike, all of them made their way across the land on foot. And if one of our people could no longer walk, we carried them, or sometimes left him behind. Many perished along the way, some died of exhaustion, others simply gave up and fell by the wayside. A great number were set upon by human bandits, even though we had few possessions. Along the way, a growing number began to bemoan the decision to leave the winter. At least in the winter, they said. We had food and water and shelter. What do we have here? Nothing but the open sky and the prospect of the never-ending road ahead. Some turned back towards the winter, but most of us continued walking. And the gods rewarded those of us who did not waver by bringing us to the Dales. Our people called the new city Halam Shiral, the end of the journey, and for a time it was home, as told by Kisharel, keeper of the Ralafian clan of the Dalish elves. I do have to, by the way, say, I was thinking about it, and I don't remember we would have actually let Isolde die. Maybe I then did do that decision. It has been a while since we played it, but I really don't think I did, nonetheless. I think I went to the circle first, but maybe I then didn't. I kind of unsure now, but okay, let's read more. The Underfells? What's that place then exactly? Brother Genitive is something. The Underfells are a land of shocking extremes. It is the most desolate place in all the world, for two blights have left great expanses of the steppes so completely devoid of life that corpses cannot even decay there. No insect or crab will ever reach them. It is a land filled with wonders like the Merdane, with its gigantic white statue of Our Lady carved into its face, her hands outstretched and bearing an eternal flame, or Weishap's fortress, with its walls of living rock towering over the desolate plains below. Maybe one day I will see those things in maybe like Dragon Age Inquisition or something. Maybe we're there. I have no idea where we are in that game. The Unders, too, are a people of extremes, the most devout priests and the most deadly soldiers, the poorest nation in the world and the most feared. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, Travels of the Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitive. Tida's calendar, so the calendar we're going through. For most walk, the details of our calendar have little purpose. It is useful only for telling them the Summer Day Festival will be held, when it will be held, when the snows are expected to begin, and when the harvest must be complete. The naming of the years are a matter for historians and taxmen, and few, if pressed, could even tell you the reason that our current age is named after dragons. I have no idea. It is 930 Dragon Age, the 13th year of the 9th age since the crowning of the Chantry's first divine. Each age is exactly 100 years. That is short age, in all honesty, with the next age name chosen in the 99th year. The scholars in Val Royeaux advised the Chantry of potence seen in that 99th year. A Chantry authorities pore over the research for months before the divine announces the name of the immediate dates. The name is said to be an omen of what is to come, of what the people of Tedas will face for the next 100 years. The current age was not meant to be the Dragon Age. Throughout the last months of the Blessed Age, the Chantry was preparing to declare the Sun Age, named for the symbol of the Orlesian Empire, which at the time sprawled over much of the south of Tedas and controlled both Ferelden and what is now Nevarra. It was to be a celebration of Orlesian imperial glory. But as the rebellion in Ferelden reached head and the Battle of River Dane was about to begin, a peculiar event occurred. A rampage, the rising of a dreaded High Dragon. Dragons had been thought practically extinct since the days of the Nevarran dragon hunts, and they say that to see this great beast rise from the frostbacks was both majestic and terrifying. As the rampage began, and the High Dragon decimated the countryside in its search for food, and the elderly divine Faustine II abruptly declared the Dragon Age. Okay, so I assume it's actually the High Dragon that we killed, who is the reason that this age is called the Age of the Dragon, even though we will also kind of be meeting sort of the old god dragon as well, that is leading the Darkspawn on the other hand, so in that sense also Dragon Age is kind of fitting. But yeah, interesting thing, I had no idea. Some say the Divine was declaring support for Orlais in the battle against Ferelden, since the dragon is an element of the Dufael family heraldry of King Mecren, the so-called usurper king of Ferelden. Be that as it may, the High Dragon's rampage turned towards the Orlesian side of the Frostback Mountains, killing hundreds and sending thousands more fleeing to the northern coast. The Ferelden rebels won the Battle of River Dane, ultimately securing their independence. Many thus think that the Dragon Age will come to represent a time of violent and dramatic change for all of Tedas. It remains to be seen. From a Studios Theologicon by Brother Genitive Chantry Scroll, 925 Dragon. Interesting. The chasing we do know about, we specifically met more chasing at the start of the game, the people living in the wilderness, more or less, but we might as well read about them properly. The Jacint Wilders have lived in the Korgari Wilds since the first wars with the Almari drove them southwards a millennium ago. According to their own lore, they had always been a forest-dwelling people that adopted quickly to their new home. Game and fish are plentiful in the wetlands, and the Jacint thrived. For a time, they and the hill-dwelling Avars were true threats to the northern lowlands. The Tevinter Imperium had arrived and was hard-pressed to keep back the waves of invasions from the south and the west. The fortress of Ostagar was built specifically to watch for Jacint hordes venturing north of the tree line. It was not until the legendary warrior Hafter soundly defeated the Jacint in the first half of the Divine Age that the question of their ability to contest the lowlands was settled permanently. Today, the Jacints are considered largely peaceful, though their ways are still primitive compared to our own. In the Korgari Wilds, they live in strange-looking huts, built on stilts or even built into the great treetops. They paint their faces and are split into small tribes ruled by shamans like those amongst the Avars. There are many tales of the shamans having learned their magic from the witches of the wilds. Witches that inspire as much terror as they do awe and gratitude, even if there is no definite proof they exist. In particular, the tale of Flemet, the greatest witch of the wilds, is celebrated amongst all tribes. While there is no way to know how many there are in the wilds today, few travelers that pass through the forest tell of Jacint King? I guess so. First tell of Jacint the King out an existence even in the frozen wastelands of the far south. One can assume that should the Jacint ever organize themselves once more, we might have reason to fear them in Ferelden. We ignore them at our peril. From Ferelden Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, a Chantry Scholar. Arlatan Part 1, but I guess I don't have Arlatan Part more, so those are kind of difficult to justify starting to read when we don't have more parts to them. I don't know if I've missed them somewhere or why don't I have them, but I guess we can read about the dragon cults. After all, the dragon cult was there with the urn of the sacred ashes at least. Let us suggest for the moment that the high dragon is simply an animal, a cunning animal to be sure, but in possession of no true self-awareness or sentience. There has not, after all, been a single recorded case of a dragon attempting to communicate or performing any act that could not likewise be attributed to a clever beast. How then does one explain the existence of so-called dragon cults throughout history? There's a lot of them? One dragon cult might be explainable, especially in light of the reverence of the old gods in the ancient Tevinter Imperium. In the wake of the First Blight, many disparate imperial citizens turned to the worship of real dragons to replace the old gods who had failed them. A dragon, after all, was a god figure that they could see. It was there, as real as the archdemon itself, and, as evidence makes clear, did offer a degree of protection to its cultists. Other dragon cults could be explained in light of the first. Some cult members might have survived and spread the word. The worship of the old gods was as widespread as the Imperium itself. Certainly some secrets could have made their way into many hands. But there have been reports of dragon cults even in places where the Imperium never touched. Among folks who had never heard of the old gods or had any reason to. How does one explain them? Members of the dragon cult live in the same lair as a high dragon, nurturing and protecting its defenseless young. In exchange, the high dragon seemed to permit those cultists to kill a small number of those young in order to feast in draconic blood. That blood is said to have a number of strange long-term effects, including bestowing greater strength and endurance, as well as an increased desire to kill. Strange. And interesting at the same time. It may breed insanity as well. Nevaran dragon hunters have said these cultists are incredibly powerful opponents. The changes in the cultist are a form of blood magic, surely, but how did the symbiotic relationship between the cult and the high dragon form in the first place? How did the high dragon convince them to care for its young or know that they would? Is there more to draconic intelligence than we have heretofore? Therefore seems so much more correct to me, but anyways, guess that no member of the dragon cult has ever been taken alive, and what accounts exist from the days of the Nevaran hunters record only mad rants and impossible tales of godhood. With dragons only recently reappearing and still incredibly rare, we may never know the truth, but the questions remain. From Flame and Scale by Brother Florian, Chantry Scholar 928 Dragon. Interestingly enough. Interesting tale. Well, there's a lot of different geographical locations too. For certainty. The old gods. The casteless, certainly I have to read about myself. The caste system in Orzammar includes many groups of privilege, the nobility and the warriors above all others, but to a lesser degree the merchants and the smiths and the miners. Tradition establishes a clear hierarchy, but as in any culture with an upper class, there is also a clear underclass. These unfortunate, the so-called casteless, are believed to be the descendants of criminals and other undesirables. They have been looked down upon since Orzammar's foundation. They have taken up residence in a place called Dusttown, a crumbling ruin on the fringe of Orzammar's common areas. Orzammar society considers these casteless lower than even the servant caste. Indeed, the casteless are not allowed to become servants, as it is too honorable a position. They are seen as little better than animals, their faces branded at birth to mark them as the bastard children of the kingdom. Their home district, little more than a slum, is a haven for crime, organized and otherwise. What a surprise when you can do nothing else than a crime. Osama's guards seemingly cannot be bothered to patrol its streets. The best that most Catholic dwarves can hope for is a life at the whim of a local crime lord, ended abruptly by violence or an overabundance of toxic lichen ale. Even so, there is some hope for the castless, a dangling rope that offers a way up into a greater Orzammar society. Since a dwarf's caste is determined by the parents of the same sex, the male child of a nobleman is part of the noble's house and caste. Strangely, it is acceptable for a casteless woman to train in the arts of courtly romance, even. Strangely, it is acceptable for a casteless woman to train in the arts of courtly romance to woo nobles and warriors. They are known as noble hunters. Any male born from such a union is considered a joyous event, considering the low rate of dwarven fertility. The mother and entire family are then taken in by the father's house, although they retain their caste. The dwarves we know on the surface are also considered casteless once they leave Orzammar, although this is only relevant to those who return, if they are allowed to return at all. Dwarves who leave for the surface, the sun-touched, as they are often called behind their packs, lose their connection to the stone and the favor of the ancestors, and thus are worthy of little more than pity, for upon dying they are said to be lost to the stone forever. Put that way, it seems a sad existence indeed, from Stone Halls of the Dwarves by the Brother Genitivi Chantry Scholar. Yeah, well, doesn't really matter to me, I guess, when I was already never marked anywhere, so what did I lose by coming here? Absolutely zero. Absolutely nothing lost. The case. Visitors to Orzammar should keep in mind that the hierarchies of dwarven society are much more complex than our own. It is easy to gravely insult a man simply by mistaking his position. Since this can lead to unnecessary loss of life and limbs, I will attempt to mitigate the danger for many fellow travelers. The society of Orzammar is divided into nobles, warriors, smiths, artisans, miners, merchants, and servants. Now you are undoubtedly saying to yourself, we have all those divisions among our own people. This is a dangerous misconception. Certainly we do have nobility. Artisans, merchants, and these positions are largely inherited from our parents. However, the younger children of noblemen often choose to be artisans or soldiers. The sons of merchants may join the army or become servants, or apprentice themselves to a craftsman. This is all freely chosen, limited perhaps by the circumstances of birth, but still chosen. What is a matter of choice for most human folk is dictated entirely by birth for dwarfs. No one may become a smith who may not born to smith caste parents. A servant who marries a nobleman will never be able to be a noble himself, and although his daughters would be nobles, his sons would be servants, for daughters inherit the caste of their mother, while sons inherit the caste of their father. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, Travels of a Chantless Girl by Brother Genitivi. Yay, life in Orzammar on the other hand. The dwarves of Orzammar are quite unlike those found in most human cities. Although Orzammar derives its vast wealth from trade with human kingdoms, all dwarves who come to the surface to trade are stripped of their position in society. Dwarven merchants are so ubiquitous in human cities that many people labor under the impression that all dwarves are merchants, or that their full race worships coin and trade. But these surface dwarves are the atypical creatures, the ones willing to give up all ties to their kin and sacrifice their rank in order to conduct business. Below ground, the dwarves are a people obsessed with honor, their own and that of their family. Most nobles incorporate chainmail even into formal counts, because slight and insults often turn deadly. They are a people who revere excellence and strive to achieve it in all things. Even members of the servant caste have been elevated to paragons, usually posthumously, in recognition of remarkable service. I could at least try to read still there's actually a lot of these dwarven things that, especially considering I was over there, from there, I should really read. So, the city of Orsamar. The dwarves are lauded for their craftsmanship, and the city of Orsamar is one of their finest works. Orsamar lies at the heart of the Frostback Mountain, deep underground. The city arcs outwards from the royal palace, which is built around a natural lava vent continuously fontaining liquid rock, which both lights and heats the entire cavern. The topmost tier of Orsamar is home to the noble caste, with their blazes fanning out in both directions on the court of the king as well as the shepherd, which serves as a repository for all dwarven knowledge. The lower tiers is the commons, where the merchant's caste holds sway and where the finest works of Orsamar's craftsmen are for sale. In the center of the river of lava, connected to the commons by a causeway, are the proving grounds, a sacred arena where the dwarves, by ancient tradition, settle their disputes. On one side of the fiery river are the ruins of the old dwarven places and palaces even. Palaces fallen into disrepair, which the locals call Dust Town, now home to the city's castless. On the other side of the river are the deep roads which once joined the sprawling dwarven empire together, but now, after centuries of darkspawn incursions, are largely sealed off. Nearly all knowledge of this network of underground passages has been lost, even to its builders. Yeah, sadly true. Then the Legions of the Dead. Yes, Stone, greetings friend, you will fight ceaselessly in the Legion of the Dead, motto of the Legions of the Dead. The Legion accepts all, so I was told by one of the Legionnaires himself, a dwarf who waited quietly at the entrance to the deep roads for the rest of his unit to assemble. They gather slowly, each equipped with heavy armor and fine weapons, each painted with grim tattoos applied at their funerals the night previous. For that is the nature of the Legion. They are all dead. Any dwarf may join the Legion so long as he is willing to give up everything he has. The funeral rites are somber. A final goodbye is said to family and loved ones. Any material goods are dispersed to heirs and last words are said, and then it is done. The new legionnaire marches out into the deep roads never to return. The Legion fights against the Darkspawn to the last, striking one final blow against the monsters that have claimed so much of their homeland. Many join the Legion to clear the slate. Criminals join to avoid punishment. The dishonored join so that their houses and families need not suffer on their behalf. The bankrupt join so their debts might be forgiven. A very few join for a last chance at glory, but the Legion takes them too. This group hopes to reach the fabled fortresses of the Bovnamar, once the Legion's home, associated with the greatest of their paragons. Bovnamar is a holy place. Its loss the last great blow against the dwarven kingdoms, and its recapture would be a glorious signal to all of Orsamar. But capture it or not, all of these warriors will die in the deep roads. It is a sobering thought, and I now know why the dwarves say the Legion's charge is the battlefield's most frightening sight. They have nothing left to lose. Makes sense. From the stone halls of the dwarves. Orsamar politics. Let's read the proving first, considering that's exactly what was mentioned earlier about the city of Orsamar 2, that where it was and all. The proving, Valos Atredum, in the 23rd year of the reign of King Regnan Eidukan, an old man of servant caste was accused of stealing a sapphire ring from his employer, Lord Days. I remember Lord Days. The servant was stripped of his position, he and his family thrown to the streets, and soon after, the servant died. The son of the disgraced servant challenged Lord Days to a proving, declaring that his father had been a victim of a cruel injustice and the ancestors would bear him witness. Lord Days had no choice but to accept. On the sacred stone of the proving's ground, the nobleman faced the servant boy. Lord Days carried a sword crafted for his own hand and was clad in his great-grandfather's armor. The servant boy had neither armor nor weapons. When the battle began, the boy fought like a full pack of angry deepstalkers, flinging himself upon the startled lord, wrenching the sword from his hand and prying at his armor with bare fingers. The boy knocked Lord Dace to the ground and beat him until the lord begged for mercy. The boy and his family were reinstated to their place in the Dace household, and the virtue of the boy's father was not questioned again. The ancestors had spoken, and no one would question their word, as told by Shaber Wartag. Yeah, well, I am happy for the boy, having suffered such injustice then, most likely at least according to how things went. Lord Dace couldn't really defeat him, which is cool. I like that. Then Orzammar politics, which we got completely in the middle of. As dangerous as it is to mistake Dwarf's caste, it is far more deadly to mistake his alliance amongst the noble houses of Orzammar. Everyone in the city is allied with someone, whether by blood or by word. The nobles do not engage directly in commerce themselves, as that is a domain of the merchant caste, but they do serve as patrons. They invest in shops or in artisans' work, and in turn reap a share of the profits as well as a measure of the credit. Merchants and warriors alike benefit from the service of a prestigious patron. The relative power of each house is ever changing. It is usually safe to assume that whichever noble house holds the throne is at the top of the heap, but below that things grow into a tangled mess. Houses ally with one another by marriage. They earn rank and prestige when combatants loyal to them, or from their own bloodlines, win provings. They earn it when artisans they patronize become sought after or well regarded, or when the merchants they invest in become successful. The degrees of power that these achievements confer is so murky even to the dwarves that it isn't unusual for nobles to challenge each another to provings over whose smith forges better belt buckles, makes better belt buckles, I guess, or whose servants have the best manners. Nor is it out of the ordinary to find two merchants arguing over whose noble patron has won the most acclaim, for the rank of the patron is the rank of the client. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the assembly, where the decious representatives of each noble house meet. Although the king technically rules Orzammar, kings are elected by the assembly, and so each king must work constantly to maintain the support of the decious. Kings who prove unpopular find their heirs deemed unacceptable to inherit the throne. Power then passes to another house. Yep, so it be. So let's still read the Dwarven Fate, and I think after that we will be doing something else than reading codex. But yeah, there's been a lot of interesting things nonetheless read. Sadly, there's just so much more that we could read, so I gotta do it again at some point. Dwarven Fate. The chant of light is almost never heard in the halls of Orzammar. This is hardly surprising, for unlike the elves who were literally abandoned by their gods or the Tevinders who worshipped dragons, the dwarves have no gods at all. Even the concept of worship is foreign in Orzammar. Instead, the dwarves seem to venerate the stone, a name they give to the earth itself. This seems practical for the people living underground, if perhaps a bit unimaginative. For guiding in spiritual matters, they turn to their ancestors. These ancestors who are said to have returned to the stone communicate their wishes to the living by brutal trials by combat, called provings. The ancestors' collective wisdom is maintained by the shepherd, which can apparently store records in Lyrium itself. Set above the ancestors, above even kings, are the paragons, dwarves who have achieved such greatness that they are elevated almost to godhood. These are the great figures holding up the hallway that leads from the surface, the first glimpse of Orzammar that outsiders see. Yay. But yeah, lots more to read there would be, certainly, about the Blight 2 and the Darkspawn and everything, but again, can't really read everything at once at least. At least it was a reasonable amount of stuff. Reasonable. I would like to especially read the well, basically books, songs, culture and history and magic and religion are all something that I am interested in. Creatures less so, I think, but quest related and notes of course are obviously not the most important, I'd say, and it's nice that we got all of those read. Let me just click on this so that we don't need to see these things anymore in here, because I will never ever read these. What would be the point? There. They are read, supposedly. At least to some smallish degree. But okay, next episode we then go and talk to everyone and, well, go on forward somewhere or another. But I hope you enjoyed the little bit of readings of codexes, whoever watched this. And we shall do that again at some point or another. But hey, a lot of interesting information regardless. Definitely enlightened me anyways. So, thank you for watching. See you for more next time. So, bye bye. See you then. To be continued with Kirarusha next time in Dragon Age.